Whenever I see the Statue of Liberty, I know another journey is starting, billed as the toughest motorcycle expedition in the world. The Motorcycle World Challenge will take 21 riders, plus myself and a crew of 3, across 4 continents, 15 countries, and a total of 30,000 miles around the world. Having shipped the bikes from the UK to New Jersey, riders were beginning to prepare to leave, and Lee Dow was already experiencing a problem with his Moto Guzzi.
Battery's dead. A bit of a problem because Moto Guzzis aren't that prolific around here. But I think, well, we hope now we know the battery's gone. That should be the problem solved.
This journey was a major undertaking. Motorcycling around the world had the potential for great feats of heroism and great potential for catastrophe. Minutes before we arrived, a moose had run out and been hit by a truck.
Had a lot of close calls because we've been living in the north all my life, and I'm on the fire department, so we've had fatalities with moose.
The poor animal had hit the windscreen. The driver was lucky not to have been killed. The moose waited. The police would come along and shoot it.
Some of the locals might come out and take what they can off of it, or if it stays there, nobody takes it, bears will come and get it.
The long roads of Canada made for great riding. But the moose gave us a salutary lesson on how things can so quickly go wrong. Kenny McLennan, Frank Lloyd and Richard Andrews were of an altogether different disposition.
Lovely roads, thoroughly enjoying it, and the local police decided that we were going just a little bit too quickly.
I think I blame Richard really, because he was in the front at the time and we were just chasing after him.
I wasn't speeding, but these two were.
It's given us a bit of an insight into the way that the American police work. We're aware of them now and we know what they're up to.
We're only going, what was it? 130.
We talked our way down and we ended up from a $300 fine and we got off with a $52 fine.
Don't speed, because it's dangerous.
Day 2. Already we were nearly 1,000 miles away from New York. For no reason other than it looked different, we stopped at Harry's Ukrainian restaurant for lunch, where challenge manager Elspeth Beard and advance rider Matt Barrett took a few minutes break.
This is the only Ukrainian cultured restaurant from coast to coast on the Trans-Canada Highway. The interior decor is of a Ukrainian culture. All the stuffed animals that are in there are, some were given to me, some were knocked down on the road and I get a permit for it and I stuff it. I am Ukrainian and then I'm a Canadian. The Ukrainian culture is something that is not shown very much. It is very important for any culture to try and upkeep what they have, because after it dies you can't get it back.
The journey was long. Much was to be done. After 8 days, we had crossed Canada, passed through Dawson Creek, and had begun our route north up the Alaskan Highway to Muncho Lake, where everybody was getting into their stride. This was their first trip up the Alcan. For me, after 8 trips, it was an old friend. Not for everyone. Rob Hughes, self-styled independent adventurer, had encountered a problem with his chain.
Actually, my chains just give way. It gave way a couple of days ago. It's been adjusted a couple of times, and I just feel it's too dangerous to carry on with it. So I'm going to stick it on the bike, try and get a chain in White Horse, and carry on as normal.
Adrian is riding his Hayabusa, and Graham his Blackbird, me on my R1. I'm just glad to say that the roads along the highway were up to their usual standard, and may they stay that way forever. We'd arrived at Dawson City on the banks of the Yukon in deepest Klondike. Rob Hughes.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. It's just a sheer delight to your eyes. You look around and it's just like going back 100 and odd years. Absolutely wonderful.
During the gold rush of the late 1800s, Dawson City was the epicentre of all the activity. Miners made and lost fortunes. People came and went. Even today, the core population is small, growing only in the summer when the tourist trade provides some income to help businesses get through the long winter months. Every day, Elspeth organised the unfurling of the banner. It was a symbolic act which I think unified us all. This was the first time a group of riders had attempted a circumnavigation of the world, and the banner was like a badge of honour. Riders waited patiently whilst we went through due procedure, to a man or woman completely in tune with what was expected of them. Once an engine was sparked up, I had seconds before everyone did the same, and then there was no holding anyone back. The ferry crossing the Yukon was ready to take people on board. The top of the World Highway is one of the most aptly named roads. For me, it's like Groundhog Day. I keep on doing it again and again. The upside of that was that I could share what is a brilliant biking route. This route was originally carved out for the miners travelling across the Klondike during the Great Gold Rush during the 1800s, and it remains now, more or less as it was then, unpaved and isolated without major services. Only the small community of Chicken separates Dawson from Tote Junction back on the Alaskan. Lee and Gary checked their maps, and like the rest of the pack, had splintered into small groups. The Alaskan Highway is seasonal, only really open for non-commercial traffic, which is from late spring to late summer. Sunsets in this part of the world don't come any better than this. That quiet period between the sun going down and the sun rising is the time I get to think and sort out what needs to be sorted out. Day 12, Don's Motorcycle Shop, Anchorage. After 11 hard days riding, we had covered something like 6,000 miles. It was our first rest day, so we changed oil, tightened chains, checked for damage, having crossed the top of the World Highway. Tyres were being in part supported by Avon, and we were keen to test out our new Azaros. Meanwhile, at the women's camp, Nina Plum had serious mechanical issues to resolve.
So we're going to take this off now. It's a unique machine to have it welded on the back of the pickup.
Isn't it? It's alloy, not steel. So.
Yeah, he said no problem about welding it. And we're going to put an extra plate on to strengthen it.
What over the top?
A Touratech plate.
Yeah.
So have to have.
That's cool.
That is, that is
really
thin,
we're going to put
isn't
everything
it?
back together again. I am appalled at the design of this. It's taking a lot of pressure, and it's a very thin bit of aluminium that is holding a bolt. That was all that is holding, apparently, my subframe together.
Jane Homeyard had also suffered a major engine failure and had spent the last 3 days in the backup van.
It'd be what I would call material failure of the valve. It was there was something bad about when it was built, I think, because there's no evidence of anything hitting it, and that's the only other thing that could do it.
The schedule could not be stopped. For Jane and Nina, it was a nail-biting time.
You know, I bought a BMW because it's the bike to do the job. It's the bike, there's 14 of them riding here on the trip because everybody's expecting them to make it, they're solid machinery. And yet, I've got a major engine problem and Nina has got a broken subframe and they're not small and easy problems to fix. And it's just incredibly frustrating that you've gone by their name and all of a sudden everything's gone wrong.
The women's team were not, however, alone in dealing with bike problems. Lee Dowell, once again.
A road bike met a dirty road and it didn't survive. I lost my rear wheel bearing, my front wheel bearing, cracked my headlight and dented my front rims. So it's been the most expensive highway on earth, for the cheapest looking highway on earth.
Lee should count himself lucky. In my 1999 Top of the World expedition, Tony suffered more than bearing failure. Tony's had an accident and we got the ambulance, they're on the way. Tony never rode his bike again on that trip. This was something I didn't want to happen on this one. The road surface was good and dry, but after 100 miles, sections of gravel appeared. It was easy stuff, nothing deep, although a misplaced sideways glance would easily take a wheel out of line and cause a slide. The day was fast and everyone was to enjoy a day of long miles. But like a damaged groove in a record, isolated thoughts certainly stick in the mind, possibly because there is something gently absorbing about riding a bike in such an extreme manner that the mind is gently numb. It isn't precisely another worldly experience, but without always being able to bookmark the experience itself, 12 hours in the saddle every day for weeks on end is still a remarkable concept for the body and mind to have to deal with. At the end of each day, my body, almost imperceptibly, trembles. It's like the very molecules vibrate. If going around the world was my dream, then it had become infectious, as 21 other riders, plus Matt, were also beginning to understand. Having crossed Canada, journeyed up and down the Alaskan highway, we were now to head south across Vancouver and follow the Cascade Mountains until we hit the salt flats of Nevada. Day 17 and all is well. Everyone was on their bike, all fixed, all running sweetly. Frank's GS 1150 was his pride and joy. An electrician from Wrexham, this was for him a journey of a lifetime. Next time, he said he'd take his wife Jan, and she said after the kids had grown up, she'd go. This was like a training session for something that they could do together. Richard Andrews also favoured a GS. He was an eye surgeon from Newcastle and had teamed up with Kenny and Frank. When he learned he'd been accepted onto the project, I have never seen a happier man. Likewise, for Graham Willett, this was supposed to be a pre-retirement gift before settling for a quiet life. Businessman, entrepreneur, Mr. Tim White on his pan-European.
Fantastic. I mean, it's not just like a good fast ride, it goes on for 200 miles. It's phenomenal. It made me realise I can still ride a bike, and it's my 50th birthday in about 4 hours' time. Absolutely phenomenal. Recommend it to anybody. Anybody.
The cattle country of the Eastern Cascades seemed rooted in a slowed-down time warp. Adrian and Ian took the long straight roads as naturally as a mirage forms out of hot air. The journey had begun to settle into a rhythm, but it hadn't yet achieved the daily greatness I'd planned for it. Perhaps the essential element that turns the ordinary into something special is really in the hands of the riders themselves. At Gerlach, everyone tried riding on salt flats for the very first time. The flats here are a shrine to innumerable feats of heroism. When I was in Australia, Peter Arundel reached 134 miles per hour on his 1929 Indian. At Bruno's country hotel, run by his daughter Skiki, the riders settled down to more fettling and cleaning. 30,000 miles is 10 years riding for some. These boys were doing it in 3 months.
That material up on there you need to be very careful on. It's very soft. There's no grip in it, you know. So if you put too much stress on, you're going to be into trouble. Because with this heat, the material, you know, the binder in the material starts to get very soft, and then, you know, too much sideways force and you're away. The first part of the journey was certainly colder than I'd expected it to be. I sort of looked at Alaska and thinking that Alaska in summertime was acceptable. But oh dear, going over the top of the world the other morning, I don't think I've ever been so cold as that.
Didn't find it too bad. I thought it was not bad. It was cool, but not as cold as I've ridden in.
I came to a standstill because Bill wanted his photograph taking. I came to a standstill, stopped the beamer dead, and then went to put my foot out and it wouldn't go. And then the bike and me just went pop on its side.
The following morning, within an hour of everyone rising, the sun had risen strongly, hit clouds and cooled. Later that morning, I had the chance to speak with Ironbutt president and founder Mike Kneebone, and also Ron Ayres, fastest man around the US.
Starting in 1982, endurance rallies came out to Gerlach because of the desert environment. You're out here by yourself, the roads are free, Nevada is a relatively free state. Everything here reeks freedom. Freedom to ride your motorcycle, freedom to go long distances. The nearest gas station from here is approximately 80 miles away. It reeks of riding long distances. You look out here on the plains and you see something 30, 40 miles away. It spells long distance.
Someone the other day asked me, what do I think of when I think of my motorcycle? And I thought for a second, I said it's an escape machine. I didn't have my first motorcycle very long before I learned that I really hated to get off the bike. I just, you know, would ride 300 miles and want to ride 5 or 6, and I ran 5 or 6 and decided that I wanted to go even further than that. That I just love that, you know, that kind of riding. I get started and I don't like to stop.
This is a great idea and a great event to put together. I can't imagine how you're doing it. And the group of people that I met last night were just absolutely fantastic. Everybody had such a great story about their life and what they hope to accomplish from riding the event that, I mean, I want to get on my bike and go with you, and I'm going the opposite way, and it's going to hurt for a couple of days.
It's not something that it's easy to explain to someone else and make them want to do it. I mean, they've got to somehow relate to it. And I've met many riders who I've seen do that, and they immediately decide that, yeah, that's something I would really enjoy doing, and they figure out how to do it safely and comfortably. And that's the real key. I mean, it is possible to ride those kind of distances safely and comfortably, provided that you that you learn how.
The riders prepared once again to leave, this time to cross Death Valley. You never knew how it would be to cross this desert. I've had it rain and be relatively cool, I've had it so the heat is so sweltering you could fry eggs on your helmet. No kidding. The mental application needed for this journey changes every day, and it includes a kind of madness.
Well, we entered Death Valley last night, and you come over a small ridge and suddenly it opens out in front of you, and it's the sheer size of the place. It's miles across, there's mountains on each rim, and it fills horizon to horizon. And it's just like a lot of the scenery we've seen so far, it's the sheer scale of it. And as you drop down, even though it was late evening, it just got hotter and hotter and hotter. For the first time in the day, you couldn't breathe, your jacket was open, you couldn't escape from it even by going faster and faster. And then suddenly you're round this corner and you see this green oasis of Furnace Creek in the middle, and it's such an anomaly in the middle of this arid, barren crater, and this green oasis here.
You think of Death Valley, this forbidding hell of a place, and in the middle of it is a golf course, trees, you know, a pleasant resort, lovely. Swimming pool, everything you need, it's great. A bit of a shock.
The thing that I found most astounding was the deafening silence. You just couldn't hear a thing. It was so quiet, so beautiful. I just had to take a moment and just take it all in. Words can't describe the beauty of the place. One road I rode down yesterday, it just looked like about a mile long, and it must have been actually about 10. And the mountains in the backdrop, it just looked like a map from a film. It was absolutely fantastic. It's unbelievable.
Death Valley is aptly named. It is, you know, if you took all this out of here, and you didn't have a bike or a car to go through, it would be an absolutely deadly place. But the Americans have sanitised it. It's turned into a nice day out with a resort in the middle, somewhere to fill up and get an ice cream and take pictures.
There is an opera house on the edge of Death Valley, and from under the veranda, the whole picture of life here was simply an impression of stillness. No wind, no cars. Such things also give an impression of total silence. This can trick the onlooker into thinking time itself has slowed, that only the baking heat stirring the air could stop time itself. Day 21, the lower reaches of the Grand Canyon. We are entering known territory. Today, the riders would take in the Hoover Dam, Zion National Park, Grand Canyon, and Monument Valley. And that included Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico. I was in Kings Canyon. The rest of the riders were scattered across Arizona, and we were all heading southeast to Alpine, Texas. I felt freed of the shackles of responsibility. It was just great to be on the bike, when suddenly it all started to go wrong. Somewhere in the canyon, I met the backup crew driving towards me, opposite to where they should have been going. Elspeth rushed out and said that Gary had had an accident, but she didn't know how serious it was, that he'd been taken to hospital and his bike was a write-off. He'd chosen a Honda Shadow, a bike not known for its manoeuvrability. He said he'd be fine. So much went through my head. When I saw him in a wheelchair, it was strange to say, but I was almost relieved.
What we thought we could do is get your bike to Tucson, and then we could maybe get it fixed there, leave it there. We could go down to Mexico, pick it up on the way back, get it to LA.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But we'll need to try and find a bike shop there tomorrow morning.
Right, yeah, that sounds fine with me. Yeah, it saved the bike being on the back of the van as well all the time. I shan't give it up now. No. I mean, I'd ride the bike now if it wasn't for this blooming thing, if you haven't got to stick your hands out light sort of thing. Adrian said the forks might be slightly bent, but it doesn't look too bad. A lot of it's cosmetic, so you know, they should be able to fix it and it's rideable again.
At the campsite in Big Bend National Park, much had quickly returned to normal.
You look so pretty, you know, Nick, we can't do it.
I saw him. Gary's broken collarbone meant he would have to rest up in Tucson and meet up a few days later in LA. But only if a doctor gave him the go-ahead could he start again in Sydney. Day 23, another disaster.
Get it off now, Nick. Take it away, Nick.
Not much fun seeing your friend going inside out down a ditch with your bike on top.
I was riding lead file and I'd lost Graham in my mirrors. I checked and he still wasn't coming. And stupidly, I looked behind me looking for him in case he was in the blind spot in my mirrors. Went straight up a rock and straight over it and into the gully. I've damaged where the collarbone joins the shoulder. Riding is absolutely out of the question until I've had an x-ray.
Breakfasting up the road at Studi Butt, Lee Dowell explained again the problem with his bike.
Well, the bike's sick. We're not sure what it is. The problem is multi-franchise dealers over here. They can deal with changing plugs and oil filters and air filters, but there's no real depth knowledge of guzzies. Well, not this part of the country. I believe there are in the States, but not around here. So they've ummed and ahed and they've thrown up suggestions, or it could be the electronic control unit, it could be this, could be that. But I've got a little bit of an oil leak from the transmission. I've got fuel coming out of one of the injectors. Then there's some weird noises coming from down by the alternator way. When it's on tick over, the battery light comes on, which means it's not charging, even though it's on the correct revs. Sometimes it runs like a 1973 Escort that's never been serviced, and then the other time it runs quite smooth, but then I've got no engine braking, so I'm no mechanic. I just hope somebody out there is, and we can get this thing sorted. It might, knowing Italian bikes, it'll be something like a 10p grommet or something, and it'll sort the whole problem out. Well, that's what I'm hoping.
Day 25, Creel to Parel. Having crossed into Mexico at the frontier town of Presidio, we rode across the Chihuahuan Plain before climbing 8,000 feet up the Sierra Madre Mountains. Creel itself was a charming collection of colourful buildings, a small town with people very much at ease with the coming and goings of travellers like ourselves. Back at our hotel, the Plaza Mexicana, more checks were carried out on the bikes, and as she did every day, Elspeth gave the riders their daily briefing.
Go around and see everybody.
Yes, 'cause
and
Matt
sort
does,
out
Adrian
exactly
does.
what tyres everybody needs and when they need them.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll make.
Eager to set off in the cool of the early morning, the riders had a 400-mile day to the industrial city of Parel, deep into central Mexico. For a mixture of reasons, Claire, Gary, Tim, Rob, Lee and Matt were to sit this one out and meet us when we cross back into the States. Adrian's 180 mile per hour, 150 horsepower Hayabusa was struggling to breathe. The countryside between the mountains and the plains was very special indeed. Hardly any traffic until you reached the passes, but moments that had to be cherished.
I think it's always the trivial little things. And even I look back at my diary from 3 days, even 3 days ago, and you think, oh God, I've forgotten that already, or I've forgotten this already. And it's those stupid little pathetic things you remember at the time, and they're in your head for about 2 hours, you finish writing up, and then you forget about them.
Today we rode through clouds of black butterflies, some of whom buried themselves against our visors. On the road, colourful Mexican crickets displayed all the tendencies of lemmings as they tried to cross the road. Between the bluffs and the rolling hills, 4-centimetre long green caterpillars ambled into small leaves to eat their way through puberty, which, if you use this as an analogy for the challenge, wasn't it what every rider was doing here, sifting through layers of new experience? It was the same for me too, but I had the added role of observer. I just kept a quiet eye on things. Back in the States, the all too familiar bustle of trucks and cars was in stark contrast to where we had been. Mexico had been charming. My enduring memory was of my last sunset over the Sonora Desert before re-entering the US at Douglas, Arizona. Day 30, LA Airport, getting ready to freight the bikes to Sydney. 8.5 volumetric tons of high-performance machinery had to be flown across the Pacific with the minimum of delay.
I've got a cargo examination I'd just like to book in for today if I can. Well, I've got some motorcycles coming in, and they're for a world challenge, so they're arriving at about 9 o'clock today. They'll be checked in at Qantas, I'd say, around about lunchtime. Do you reckon I'll be able to get something for later this afternoon?
But there was a delay. War tariffs had been imposed on the consignment, which because of its dangerous goods certification had been rerouted via Singapore, unloaded and rechecked. I had to make a decision to cut out Tasmania and leave out a couple of days near the Burmese border. Eventually we got to Robe in South Australia. I was to stay with friends I'd met the last time I was there, Captain and Lady Catherine Boggles, he of the Tiger Moth fame, and she as his amanuensis.
1, 2, 3, 4. Bacon and eggs for how many? Oh, they're brilliant. There's some really good lads there who like to pull legs, and that's good. Yes, and they seem to like their tiger moths, and that's nice as well. And I just hope that the wind dies down so you can have a look at the scenery of Robe on your way out.
It's been an adventure, certainly been an adventure. Seen so many things now which were all a dream before. It's just been awesome. The biggest regret is that at times I feel quite selfish because unfortunately I can't share it with my wife Jan, and I know she would love to be here with me. Maybe next time on the second lap she can come with me.
It was now time to head north up the Stewart Highway towards Darwin, a 3,000-mile ride across some of Australia's most isolated terrain. Biking around the world is very much to do with experiencing the culture, colour and creed of different people. It's also to do with learning how to deal with yourself. About halfway up between Adelaide and Alice Springs, Cooper Pedy has established itself as the opal mining centre of Australia. An eclectic place where native culture meets Australian incomers. Everywhere, opals are for sale, the result of labour from men, some of whom have spent half their life underground. Up the road, more delightful eccentrics.
My name is Kentucky and I come from Coolin, New South Wales, and Bob, he comes from Ulan, and we're raising money for the Children's Cancer Institute Australia, walking from Alice Springs to Adelaide. Previously I have walked 11,000 kilometres from Coolah to Alice Springs and back down again, and I've walked to Brisbane. I've walked camels across the Sydney Harbour Bridge to be the first person to do that in Australia. I raced a camel from Ayers Rock to the Gold Coast in the Great Australian Camel Race for the bicentenary it was. We've raised over 150,000.
A lot of Ken's life has been devoted to his wanderings, much of it spent in his bus.
We've got the Black Stump Nursery Rhyme Village and Camel Farm back home, back in Coolah, and my wife looks after that. And when I'm at home, I do matchstick art. That's a bottle cave, all made out of bottles, and that's the Grand Old Duke of York, which is a nursery rhyme of England. And that's a crocodile carved out of a tree, and that's a chapel I built when I came out of the desert in 1981, and that's matchstick art.
Ken was first and foremost a camel man, but like every adventurer worth his salt, he had a history of riding bikes.
I started riding BSA motorbikes in Sydney, and then I switched over to a Triumph, which was a heap of crap. And then later on in life, I rode a 750 Yemi shaft drive. That was a good bike, big thick one. And then I did Europe on a motorbike. That was a 650 Yamaha. I did 21,000 kilometres around Australia on a Kawasaki computer rubbish. And then I traded that in and bought a 1100 Suzuki in Perth, shaft drive. And that's about all the bikes I've ridden. Camels are like women and children. They don't need much in life. All they need is a lot of love, a lot of attention. And camels is a good way of stopping the traffic, like I've stopped you today with camels. And it's giving something back to the people. I give a receipt, official receipt for all monies raised, but it's also give them an opportunity to pat the camel. Well, I think you should follow your dream. If you want to do something, you should go out and do it. If you've got a sickness, or like I've got, you should get off your backside and get out and do what you want to do in life. Life's short. And as far as not as saying, oh, well, I can't afford this and I can't afford that, there's ways and means that will allow you to be able to do it.
Ayers Rock, the largest monolith in Australia, the sacred heart of Aboriginal culture, the place which says you are now in the outback. As if I really needed a map. I mean, Ayers Rock was a landmark, wasn't it? So I said to Map, burn the damn thing. We are motorcycle rebels, right? Well, probably not. Historically, road trains in the Australian outback had 3 trailers behind the cab. Now some of them are beginning to pull 4. There is talk that they will soon be allowed to pull 5. Hundreds of miles from any major area of population, I stopped at Barrow Creek, a typical watering hole on the Stewart Highway.
Oh, well, for me, this is the centre of the universe, because everybody has to come through here to go somewhere else, so it's sort of not remote or anything. So, but I find it tremendous. Like you can sit out on the veranda and watch the sun go down, and the silhouette of the old rustic windmill out there, and all the colours that you get off the sun refracting off the clouds. It's really magic out here. So this November the pub will be 70 years old, but not old by European standards, but certainly old by being in the middle of Australia. So in about 6 years' time, that'll make that I've been here for 20 years. So I think I might let someone else have the privilege of running it, and then I'll see if I can get a yacht and a motorhome, I think. Sort of spend time on the land and time on the ocean.
The landscape around here was like a sea, and you felt like a sailor, marooned on an island of red dirt. Meanwhile, John Bagley and Richard Andrews had become the first riders on the challenge to ride over 1,000 miles in less than 14 hours.
I think it was a challenge, and that is it. And talking to everybody seemed to be dropping out, and the more people dropped out, the more I thought, well, it's got to be done. Someone has to do it. And
I think it was a totally moronic, stupid, waste of time thing to do, and I think that's what the appeal was. And having done it, it is a totally moronic waste of time. But I'm glad I did it, only for that reason.
The challenge was there, Richard, and we had to do it.
It was there to do, and we did it. And there's no value in it, but it's worth doing, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, but the more people talked about doing it and then not doing it, it became
more
important.
And
we
so
did it.
there was two Muppets who were willing to do it, so we clubbed together and we did it.
And I do point out, I think Matt Mason helping me out with all my homework was important as well.
You still ran out of bloody fuel, though.
Yeah, I did.
So
once,
Matt, do your homework better.
Yeah, well, could do.
It was.
But at the end of the day, no, I think it was important. And what I have noticed that now we're here feeling very smug, and lots of other people have suddenly realised
that they want to do it.
That they could have quite easily have done it, but they didn't. You know, and they have
so
to
they
make
can
their
waste a
decision.
day like we did.
No.
Which is even better.
No, I don't think.
Day 47, heading across the Northern Territories. More bike riding, miles and miles and more miles. This is what it's like being on the road, or off. Graham Willett took a tumble.
This section apparently is about 10 kilometres. We're about halfway through it. The water tanker had been, he'd made the surface was just like glass. Suddenly in the distance I saw Bill go, he went off, and that took my concentration for a second. But the next thing I knew, I was on the ground, and the bike was following me. So, you know, and got up. Everything seems to be perfectly all right, but I think the knee is gone, actually. Thankfully, Richard Andrews was behind, who's obviously a doctor, and he just had a quick look, and, you know, we think we're okay.
I don't think it's broken, but I think he's probably done his ligaments in. So we'll go to hospital in Broome and get it sorted out. He's sore, he can't walk and he can't bend his knee at the moment, so I think we'll wait and see what they say. But the bike's sortable, we've just got to wait to see what they say about Graham. So, another day, another hospital.
The bike is a bit the worse for wear, I'm afraid. The clutch is gone and the exhaust pipe's knocked off, so, you know, we're going to be back at the van job for a minute or two by the look of it.
2, 3, hey!
Riding along there, minding my own business. Next thing the bike was out below me, and I'm roly-poly over the bank there.
So I came off as well, actually. Yeah, it's quite a bad road. Yeah, the water carrier had just been sort of, you know, wetting the surface, because obviously constructing a new road here, and I just came off. Yeah, slid off.
I think you'll get to the end of the day, Nick. Yeah. I think it will be fine there. Your exhaust is slightly knocked back. But if you keep throwing it on the floor, like you have done just back there, you won't get there.
And 2 or 3 riders came off in front of us. So, oh, there we are. Well, that's riding around the world for you.
That evening, advanced rider Matt Barrett clipped a kangaroo and was lucky not to slide down the road.
Must have been bouncing towards the road, sort of at right angles to us. And yeah, as I say, I just didn't see a thing before he's taken my right hand indicator off, so that's how close he was to my front wheel, and then glanced and hit my foot. So really, the only thing he really hit was my foot, and I can't believe he's as badly injured as he is from that, because I felt it, but not. I thought he'd just glanced him and he'd have hopped off, but obviously not.
After partly riding through the night, Matt and I caught up with everyone on the west coast of Australia at Port Hedland, and once again, Elspeth was briefing the riders. Port Hedland is an isolated township on the far west of Australia and survives by mining and distributing iron ore and salt. A more startling contrast from the thriving Gold Coast could not be more evident. Some days on a world tour are surprisingly empty. The landscape is flat, and over time and hundreds of kilometres, it becomes tedious to look at. Even the sky is uninspiring, which, belittled by the enormity of the desert, the two bignesses cancel each other out. Meanwhile, Frank, Kenny and Richard were spotted taking a break, shortly followed by Nina, who was endlessly enthusiastic about her own journey.
I'm loving the flowers and the colours. I've seen pretty goats, live kangaroos, emu, a feral cat, and farmland at last. What happened to Backpacker's Paradise?
Hey?
Because we didn't find the paradise.
It was a mystery.
Once we reached Perth, I moved into gear and organised the freighting to Singapore. The project was as much a journey of logistics as a journey on the road. And once again, Lee explained what had happened to his Goodsey.
This is my rear shop where it mounts onto the rear subframe. And as you can see, the man moved the wheel today and a part fell off. And apparently, well, looking at it, it's been like this for a long time, but hanging on by my weight, pushing on to the back of the bike like that. So if I'd have hit a big bump maybe and it could have come out, I'd have been off. Obviously, parts are hard to come by over here. Phoned around, there's nothing in Australia by the looks of it. So we're going to head to Singapore, FedEx out a new shop for me in a couple of days' time.
Day 56, Singapore Customs. Clearly the freighting procedure had gone to plan. Riders filed past to have their documents examined so that we could leave Singapore and enter Malaysia. Considering some of the riders had never travelled abroad before, it was becoming a routine experience to cross borders. And an hour or so later, we were in the beautiful old colonial city of Malacca. The night market in Malacca is known as one of the nicest markets on the peninsula. Times like this help the riders to switch off and relax. Until you've ridden in Far East traffic conditions, you have no idea how much local rules of the road differ from those in Europe. The following morning, a call came through to Elspeth.
I think two of the riders have been hit from behind by some army truck. So John's just phoned in and we're going to go and try and find them. They're on the main road into Malacca.
The four of us had set off from the Hotel Puri this morning and were negotiating some traffic lights which Graham and myself had made through, and the lights changed, forcing John and Bill to stop. Unfortunately, the driving in this part of the country doesn't match the actual quality of the roads, and the driver that was obviously coming up fairly fast behind Bill failed to stop and parked himself in the rear of Bill's bike, pushing him out into the junction. As Graham and I turned round to sort of see what had happened, expecting something a little more serious than what we actually found, which was quite a lot of extensive damage to the front of the car, but nothing at all to Bill's BMW, which was absolutely astounding, really, bearing in mind what had happened.
After a thorough examination, Bill's bike was judged rideable. The riders congregated and made ready to ride north across Malaysia.
I just want to ride around the world, you know. It really is as basic and as simple as that. There's nothing more to it. Whatever comes along with it, any fulfilment or anything satisfaction I get from it, that's all well and good. I've been to this country before, but straight through it, and now I'm riding in it. We're away from the sort of safe environments of everybody understanding you, everybody speaking English, and just different. You know, the roads are a bit more manic in some respects. You know, things flying around everywhere. I'm enjoying that. You know, I've got real faith in the bike. I don't know, people, you know, when things go wrong, people just roll their eyes and the guzzy again. The things that have gone wrong, the battery, that could happen to a lot of bikes and has happened to another bike. Bearings, okay, that was a particularly rough road on a bike that's not designed for it. The shock collapsing. It's not made by Guzzi, they buy it from someone else, but it's not good. The electrics, yeah, they'll give that to Guzzi. When I rode around the States on the Honda, I used to pull up to a place, park it and leave it. It's just a tool. I always wished I had like a louder pipe, it was a bit more different looking. You know, and now I'm riding around this, I love it. You know, it's a big, noisy, ugly thing, a bit like myself. And you know, I get real satisfaction when it gets there. You know, it might limp there, but it's getting there. I'm positive it's going to get it home. And it's fantastic. I'm loving it.
Charioting on the east coast of Malaysia. Further north, the plan was to cross close to the famous Cameroon Highlands, and so twice traversing the backbone of the peninsula. Just now, we had a few quiet roads before we hit more heavy traffic. 96 days is a long time to ride together, so Rob and Gary are taking a break on a beach in Phuket. Matt and Lee are heading to Pattaya, Ian and Adrian have returned south to Malacca, and the main body of riders will ride north past Bangkok in a circular loop via Kanachiburi. The clouds were deep, the rains never far away. Somehow, we had all become accustomed to the rainy season in Southeast Asia. The rain, when it fell, was heavy, but never prolonged and actually quite warm. Georgetown, Penang. When I first went there over 20 years ago, it had very few tall buildings and retained much of its colonial character. Now, the history of the city was a sideshow eating into valuable business space. The next day, the riders lunched in Kanachiburi by the bridge over the River Kwai, only to head further north to Nong Khai on the banks of the River Mekong. Nina and Clive had ridden into Cambodia, hoping to visit Angkor Wat. Graham, Jane and Claire also decided to stay in Phuket. It was a disparate schedule. Everyone was flung over a 15-mile length of the peninsula, an idea that would have horrified some of these people less than 2 months ago. For the second time in 20,000 miles, Frank's BMW began to seriously malfunction.
Well, I think the bearing's gone in the rear differential. I noticed a problem with it when I was riding yesterday at slow speeds. There was a vibration from the back. At first I thought it was the tyre that had gone, and then when we arrived here last night, I decided to drain the oil. I spun the wheel and found it was notchiness, so I dropped the oil out of the differential and there was some metal filings in there. I was back on the road soon.
I'd planned to take the riders to the Burmese border, but it was too ambitious in the time we had. Down south, Rob spoke of his plans.
We're going to Phuket and we're going to go and have a little adventure. We're going to get away from the main gang, for a little bit of peace and quiet, and spend some time on the beach.
A couple of days on the beach, chilling out, it'll be fine, it'll be lovely. This is probably the favourite part of my journey. This is Southeast Asia. I love Malaysia. I'm looking forward to Thailand, India, yeah, smashing. It's completely different from the Western culture. I mean, I've enjoyed all the places we've gone, Australia, America, Canada, they've all been great, but they've been Western cultures. It's good fun just to get up every morning, ride 500, 600 miles, whatever. It's just great stuff, really good fun.
Border and customs controls were a minefield of paperwork, but we'd made a big effort to have our documents in order, so it all went smoothly.
The Malaysian people have been extremely efficient, and so are the Thai, very, very good, no problem at all. Apart from the cities and the suicide jockeys on the 50cc mopeds who just don't seem to have any respect for their lives or anybody else's, but you sort of get into it after a while, and you find we were taking them on our own ground this morning, so...
After years of travelling, I found second and third world bureaucracy doesn't frustrate me as it once did. It's how it's all done that matters, and as long as you smile, everything usually turns out all right in the end. Back in Bangkok, the media and the girls wanted to get to know the challenge riders.
biking's secondary, and there's more to life than anyone can realise. You need to get out there and you need to see it to appreciate how good, how bad, how indifferent it all is. The way the people work in Malaysia, Thailand, from dawn till dusk, the only thing that they're thinking about is putting a meal on the table and a bit of clothing on the back. And as far as we're concerned, everything's so cheap. I mean, they work for a few baht a day, which is pennies, yet they'll toil from dawn till dusk just to get it on the table. Their attitude is completely amazing, and the people are so friendly. The bike has now become a tool to see what I'm seeing, to see the sights, to see the people, to meet the people, where it's no longer a pleasure to ride the bike as it was before I come on this trip. Before I come, the thought of riding the bike every day for 500, 600, 700 miles a day was absolutely fantastic. But now the mileage just doesn't mean a thing. It doesn't mean a thing. So long as I can see people, talk to people, see how they feel. This World Challenge is not about riding the bike as I thought in the first place, but it's about seeing the things that are going on in the world, seeing the real world.
After riding back to Singapore, I freighted the bikes to Istanbul and we flew to Madras and then travelled to the Royal Enfield factory where 26 brand new bikes were waiting for us.
Jesus Christ. You want something that's any good? It's an amazing place. Squalor, flipping smell, poverty. Absolutely incredible. Never been anywhere like it. We've had a sit on them and they're a bit different to say the least. Everything's back to front, upside down, very hard, very small. I'm looking forward to it. Should be good.
I'd like a red one, please, Nick. I've really always wanted to ride a red bike, especially an Enfield.
I think it's really stunning to see all these old bikes, I must admit. And I'm quite looking forward to it. It's a long time since I had a bike with a kickstart.
And if the arm works, you're all right on here. It doesn't matter if you've got to push it.
You've got side lights. Look,
Yeah.
side lights on the top of the headlights there.
Yeah, great stuff.
Oh, they're great.
Absolutely
Yeah,
brilliant.
fantastic.
I'm looking forward to it, mate.
You are?
Yeah, I'm looking forward.
Well, I hope you go forward, not backwards.
Now it's going to be a quick coffee, and we're going to meet all our Royal Enfield colleagues for about half an hour.
Vikram was one of the senior executives at the factory, and boss Siddhartha Lal both explained the plan and the route to the riders.
Very pleasant city.
Everyone was really excited to ride across India on 500cc bullets, if not a little apprehensive. After the usual charming hospitality you always get in India, it was time to get on with the job of riding around the world.
I think it's been going very well, and it's been great. I did anticipate some trouble on the riders getting accustomed to the bikes, but I must say I'm impressed the way they've got used to the bike, and I'm also sure that they got a feel of the traffic to some extent, and they're going to see the next one on the big ride now at 1 o'clock. Well, you would have a lot of curious spectators who would want to know what you're doing, so whenever you stop, you're going to get somebody trying to find out what is all this about. And you would find people being very helpful. They'd get off your way, but they would love to know what's happening, so they would like to stand and watch.
All right, Nick. Rocking and rolling. Excellent, excellent. Good bike.
Hands off the handlebars.
Yeah.
No probs at all.
No problem. 350cc
Holding-
going on 1300. 0 to 60 in about 16 minutes, but excellent. No problem at all.
The World Challenge had formed an association with Royal Enfield at the factory, so Vikram and his colleague Shankar had organised press calls the length of India. Eventually, we were actually on our way, heading to Bangalore on a route that included Goa, Indore, Agra and Delhi. Boss, Siddhartha Lal, seemed pleased how things were going. I was in paradise, but others were experiencing teething problems with their bikes.
It's unusual, very different, but I've got to sort that clutch out. I can't go out in the traffic again like it is. I can't stop, because I can't find neutral. The neutral finally don't work, and the clutch is dragging. It's right against the handlebars.
It was a bit risky taking the riders on such an expedition. This was no small Enfield tour. We were riding nearly 2,500 miles in 10 days, virtually riding the length of the Indian subcontinent, from the deep south to less than a day's ride south of Nepal, when, within 10 miles of Madras, disaster struck once again. At first, I didn't know what was happening or who fell off, but that soon became apparent.
I got in the wrong gear, and then something was coming, so I put on the brakes, and it just went away from me at the back. So I just went over, but it's not a problem. It's okay.
I just heard this kind of at the back, and I looked in my mirror, and there was Gary kind of sprawled in the middle of the road. I thought, uh-oh, here we go again. But anyway, he seemed fine, so he's all right.
You have to be aware of what's coming towards you as well as what's behind you. Lorries overtaking others, you have to slow right down, stop sometimes. Yeah, you've just got to be more sharper than anywhere else we've been, I think.
Well, I think they should slow down a bit, I really do. I just don't think they're kind of aware of what's on the road half the time. I mean, they're sort of, some of them are riding as if they're back in England, you know. But
it's chaos behind you, in front of you, both sides of you, above you, bloody everywhere, down, up, every 4 dimensions is just...
In India, there are salient lessons every few miles about how not to drive. Of course, it was difficult to know if this was sinking into the riders' heads. For some, it was sobering. For others, it became a cannonball run. Occasionally, we also had to ride at night, and that was a really interesting and fun experience.
Yeah, the day has been generally pretty interesting, but the traffic situation is unbelievable. I mean, so you've got to have eyes in the back of your head. I thought Penang was a bit iffy, but boy oh boy.
A good run in with Matt and his companion, who seemed to know his way into the city, but it was mayhem. It was a rapid run in, fantastic. We've had a great day, great day.
Get me in the room, please.
For some, the first few days in India were tiring and distinctly not enlightening. For others, they just took it in their stride. Day 71, Bangalore to Mangalore. It was raining. No, more than that, it was a deluge, and it had been raining for most of the way from Madras. Contrary to my worst fears, everyone, however, was coping with the conditions splendidly.
This is what we've come halfway across the world to see. Wonderful countryside and a bit of water.
But when it's as warm as this, it's not bad at all, is it? That's one of the niceties about this place. At least the rain is warm.
Rain, however, turned to sun, and that signalled a tea stop. Chai stops were a great opportunity to look around and soak up the colour of India, take on more directions from Elspeth, and then get back on the road. As we headed over to Kerala and deeply into Indian countryside, I felt some apprehension in the group, a little like a quietness before a storm. 20 years ago, Elspeth had spent nearly 9 months riding around India. She didn't like it then, but I think she marginally liked it more now. John Phillipson from Manchester was unstoppable. Everything the project threw at him, he just got on with it and did what he had to do. Likewise, Graham Willett from Derby, always smiling, always ready to have a go. Bill Smith, at 67 years of age, was the oldest man on the trip. Certainly, probably one of the oldest men to ever ride around the world. And on second camera, Matt Barrett, showing us all how it's done.
Basically, this climate is so good and the roads are very beautiful, and the riding is quite good.
More chai stops, a chance to see how the rural economy works at close quarters. Chicken and chips, anybody? At the Taj Presidency Hotel in Indore, all the riders were feted. India had embraced what we were doing. Richer, less impoverished, the beginning of a little leisure time, the culture of adventure was a concept that was slowly making inroads into the way Indian people viewed their life. That complete dependence on subsistence living was beginning to pass, and it was a very pleasing development. And for all the lowest standard of commercial life, there is more spiritual vitality in Indian village life than anywhere I've come across in the bloated, spoilt ways of the West. Meanwhile, the mechanics had worked into the small hours once again to prepare the bikes.
I have the same bike with me. Yeah. It's a 350cc.
You like Bullet?
Yes, I like Bullet. And I feel that it's the bike which separates men from boys. I like the power in this bike, and it's a legendary bike. It has got brakes on the left and gears on the right. And it's a British bike. I have read the origin of the bike and everything, and I like this bike a lot.
Every night, teams of Royal Enfield mechanics sorted out niggling problems. What is astonishing is the passion that this little bike inspires.
It's a great test for the bike and for the riders both. It was hard in a sense when the road was not okay, and the stretch of around 200 kilometers was really bad, and guys are tired, and my vehicles are also tired. So let's see.
Tomorrow it will be a good road, but some patches you will find a bit tough. Otherwise the road is good. It is Agra-Bombay road, and you will head to Agra. It's around 600 kilometers, and yes, definitely you can cover it.
Bikes are doing very well, and with the rough terrain and with the rough roads, it has really worked up well.
Everything was being made ready for the next stage of the India leg of the World Challenge. Riders were up at dawn, breakfasted by 7:30 and on the road before 8. After 2.5 months on the road, enthusiasm was undimmed.
Great, yeah, super. Yeah, probably one of the hardest days on the challenge, actually, I'd say. Quite long, tiring, very hot, and the road conditions were just terrible. Yeah, you're constantly having to look for a sort of fresh piece of tarmac, or a reasonable piece of tarmac. It was great, great. Really enjoyed it, Phil.
All the best, sir. Thank you very much. More garlanding, more press. It was all going so well. The riders were dealing with traffic conditions in India quite brilliantly. And only 2 days from Delhi, there was a chance we'd get through this leg unscathed. But then I saw Elspeth calling riders to stop. I knew instinctively something was badly wrong.
Well, from what I understand, Clive was doing about 80 and a cyclist came out in front of him. And he's just come off his bike.
Rocking and rolling, excellent. 0 to 60 in about 16 minutes, no problem at all.
I mean, he doesn't even know where he's going to today.
Clive's hit a kid on a bicycle, so his mom's taken him to the hospital now. But the local people have called for his dad. He's coming here, which would either mean that they would try to extort some money or a police case. We'll have to see if the boy's injured or not, and if the injuries are, the doctor says, is grievous, then the police procedure will have to be done. So
the van is going to follow the police van, and we'll all follow.
Yeah, but the police van
behind.
seems to be going to the police station, so let's see. I'll probably go to the hospital, find out where it is, and then see what the doctor has to say.
To the hospital first, and then to the police station.
Or probably Clive might have to go to the station and somebody with him.
The boy had to have a brain scan, but was fine. Clive was presented to court at 4 and was fined. Had it not been for my team and Enfield, he would have spent at least 3 months in custody, awaiting trial. Up the road, I had just missed another serious bus crash. Thinking back at Clive's accident made me shudder even more.
This bus is an accident. 7 pupils died.
It had happened 3 hours before I got there. Some of my riders were either getting tired, getting traffic crazy, or just becoming complacent. We had to hang on a bit longer. More press calls and things we had to do for our Enfield friends. The weather got worse and the roads deteriorated to the point where between Natick and Indore they were almost unrideable. But the show goes on. The adventure can't stop yet. Gary the postie was now riding well, fully recovered from his crash. Graham and friend Roger Murray were pretty much in unison with the conditions. And as we approached the political capital of India, the traffic increased, which reminded me of the fact that 75,000 people are killed every year here in road traffic accidents. It's probably incomprehensible to a lot of people how trucks and cars can integrate with the medieval technology that bullock carts represent. But somehow they do. It's just sometimes they don't. Meanwhile, another chai stop. I caught up with the gossip. Gary had kicked a donkey up the arse and strained his foot. Graham had hit a water buffalo and fell off, and Marco had hit a dog and took a tumble. Here, we were two civilizations trying to make sense out of who we were and what we were trying to achieve. A project as demanding as the World Challenge needed the best team available to make it happen well. I'd hand-picked friends of mine who had the kind of experience I needed. Having already ridden around the world 20 years ago, Elspeth was plucked from her water tower in Surrey to manage the project. Matt was chosen for his knowledge of the subcontinent. I decided if riders were to commit themselves to me, I was determined to commit the best to them. Up the road, once again, I asked a local for directions to Delhi.
What is your name?
Yes.
What is your name?
I am Yogesh.
Yes.
Yes. A British headquarter Mahu. HL Mahu volunteer. Mahu.
Soldier?
Yes, Mahu. And volunteer military. Fauji. Why you take for taking clear? And office. How you taking for clear? And wonderful. And Japan and Tokyo. Pagal ho gaye.
You know, the further will be a further journey than what we thought. I think it might be more appropriate to read that instead of, you know, living on 10
The original plan was to ride as a group across Europe and finish together, but that didn't happen. For the most obvious of reasons, the challenge splintered. Gary would go back to being a postman. Rob would now call himself an independent adventurer. Everyone had come down from the trip in a way that they could handle, and I think that meant having time to themselves, time to revert back to ordinary life. Marco would end up working in the family chip shop business. Jane would start a new life with Graham, and Claire would slip away reclusively. John Phillipson would immerse himself in supporting Manchester City, and Nina would be back at the farm. Clive back to Eastern Europe. And practically speaking, having broken down in Greece, Adrian rode as pillion with Ian, whilst Elspeth transported his bike in the back of the van. Richard was the only rider to stay with the crew until the French coast, and even the usually inseparable team of Kenny and Frank separated during Spain. Lee and Matt pored over their maps. Lee would return to a new house in Cornwall, and Matt back to being an oil worker in Nigeria. Parting was not always easy, and Elspeth's constant vigilance over their lives would be missed. Bill would go back to his wife, Sandy, and John Bagley back to his weekly Friday treat of a chips supper. Matt Barrett would go back to his wife in Delhi. He said he's now ridden around the world and wasn't bothered about doing it again. Lucky man, and like me, he was released from the need. I brought my family out to Morocco. It was the only way I could melt back into life as I knew it. I'd been away researching and organising the World Challenge for over a year, 8 months of which had been spent away from home, riding around the world twice. Why? Well, because I have some deluded concept that what I do will make sense to others, even if it doesn't always do that for me. Everyone likes to think that they have some control over their destiny, and probably with some arrogance, some of us try to affect other people's lives. I had no doubt that for a while the World Challenge had been powerful enough to do that. And from a personal point of view, I was beginning to wonder how my own family dealt with Daddy's many absences. The boys seemed happy enough being on the road. Henny looked after 3 children under 5. And ultimately for me, though, it had been a pleasure dealing with the challenge riders. It had been more than a pleasure, it had been a privilege. And if one line or sentiment could sum it all up for them as well as for me, it would be this: stuff the conservatory and stuff the new car. Bricks and mortar turn to dust, but fine memories are a luxury only a few care to afford.
The Scott-Oiler automatic chain lubrication system extends chain life by up to 7 times, improves performance, reduces maintenance, fits all bikes and is simple to install.